Let's begin by creating a new document. And our document is going to be a custom size, so we don't need to worry about selecting anything over here. Let's just go to our preset details, and I'm going to change the units to pixels. The width will be 400. The height will also be 400. The artboards will be 10. The bleed all the way around can stay at 0. Our color mode will be RGB, raster effects high, preview default. Let's click more settings, and we will now name our file. You will name your file beginning with your last name hyphen vector hyphen study .ai. And on the artboards, we will arrange our artboards grid by row, and we are going to change the columns to 5. So we will have 5 artboards. On each row there will be 2 rows. I'll keep the spacing at the default 20 pixels, and the rest is just a reiteration of what we have already set up. So we will go ahead and create our document, and then let's go ahead and save our document. And I'm just going to save mine to my desktop for right now. And all of our options will stay in the defaults. Just so happens I'm using Illustrator 2020, but you could use older versions of Illustrator. That'll be fine. And we will click OK. All right, so we now have our artboard. I should say we now have our document with our 10 artboards. Next, we will rename our artboards. So I'm in Illustrator 20, and I'm going to go ahead to Essentials and reset Essentials. Now, if you are using an older version of Illustrator, then you're going to have an interface more like Essentials Classic. Okay, so I'll go back to Essentials, and what we will do is select the first artboard, and you'll notice that the artboard tool is selected. And we can draw more artboards with this tool. We can also double click on the tool and get at the artboard options. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel. With the first artboard selected, I should see the properties in this version of Illustrator, and I'm going to rename artboard 1 to logo 1, and then I'm just going to copy logo, and then I'll go through each artboard and rename each artboard. Okay, so I have gone through and selected and renamed each artboard. Now, just want to point out that if you change the name, make sure you press enter or return on your keyboard, or the name will not set. It'll go back. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Now I'm going to go ahead and save, and we will open our layer panel, and I'm just going to bring my layer panel over. I'll go back to properties, and this time we will go to the window menu, and I will open the artboards through the window menu. And this way I can see the actual artboards. And let's just make our window, our panel, a little taller, and then we'll place our layers down here also. Okay, so now in the next step we will create and name our layers for each of the logos. I'm going to now rename layer 1 to Sketch. And I'll go back and I will select layer 1, artboard 1, where we will place our first logo. And you'll see in our artboards that logo 1 artboard is selected. Okay, so it's going to be very important that you are selecting the correct artboard as you progress with your vector artwork. Okay, so with the sketch layer selected, what we will do is place our sketch. So I'm going to go up to File, and we will place, and I can show the options or remove the options. It's not going to matter. And on the desktop, I now need to find my artwork here, and I can't remember what the name was. I think it's called Logo Sketch. So I'm just going to type L, and here's Logo Sketch. So we will place. I'll just go to I'm going to make sure that the first artboard is selected. My sketch layer is selected, and I'm going to click and place. Now I'm going to go ahead and zoom out a little bit here, and then we'll just reposition our artboards, and I'm going to scale my logo. And what I want to do is I want my logo to take up as much of this artboard as possible, both horizontally and vertically. But we want to be careful because you may be adding other elements to your logo in this development process. So you don't want this to be too large. You want to make sure you have some room to work. But the idea is that even as you make changes to your logo, that you give yourself a little bit of visual room. Okay, so we want to fill this space up, but don't get too close to the edges. All right, so I'm just going to get this visually centered here. Then we will go ahead and save. So we now have our sketch on the sketch layer, and this is on logo 1. Okay, so obviously I don't know how to spell. So let's fix sketch. And before we go off to the next step, I'm going to go ahead and double click on the sketch layer, and we will dim. And you are going to need to dim this to a level which works for you. I'm going to go ahead and just select 50% for right now and click OK. And the idea is to fade back your logo so you can do your vector work over the top and it doesn't get in the way too much. Now what we're going to do is create a new layer, and we will rename the layer to, I'll just call this vector 1. And you could call this vector logo 1, idea 2. What matters is you come up with a logical naming structure, and you apply that to each of the layers that you're going to create. Okay? All right, so I have vector 1, and then what you're going to do is begin creating vector art. So I'm going to lock the sketch layer, the one with the logo, which happens to be on artboard number 1. Okay, So with vector 1, or whatever you name this layer, with this selected, I already have some vector artwork, so I'm just going to paste this back in place. So we now have what will be the beginning of our vector artwork which we're creating, and the idea is we are going to refine and continue to explore our vector sketch idea in each one of the artboards. So what I'm going to do, I already have this copied on the to the pasteboard. So what we will do is now create a new layer. This will be vector 2, and I'm going to make sure I have artboard 2 selected. Okay, and you can go ahead and deselect over here, okay, because we want to make sure we have artboard 2 selected. So you're going to begin your vector artwork. You're not going to do everything on the first artboard. You're just going to rough out your vector art. Then we'll go to our next artboard, in this case logo 2, and I have copied what's here. Well, you will copy your vector artwork, and then we can simply go to edit and paste in place, and this will show up, this being your vector work, will show up in the exact same position, only in artboard 2. And the idea is you are going to continue to work on and refine your vector art. And you're going to continue to explore other ideas, other additions. Are you going to add different borders? Are you going to change some of the letter forms? Are you going to change the width, the height, the scale, whatever? You're just going to continue to explore and refine your idea and refine your vector art. So the idea is your sketch will be on its own layer. All of the vector artwork for your first exploration will be on its own layer, and that artwork will be on its own artboard. Your second exploration will be on the second artboard, and so on and so forth. So as an example, if we turn off vector 1, okay, 2, 3, 4, and all the way up through 9, we'll see that our last artboard, our last layer, vector 10, is on artboard 10, okay? All right, so again, how you name the artboards and how you name the layers, I'll leave that up to you. What is important is you come up with a naming structure which makes sense. All right, two things which I almost forgot about. Your sketch. I want you to make sure that your sketch is embedded. So let's go to Window, Links, and let's just verify that the sketch which you imported to begin your vector art exploration with is in fact embedded, and we should see this little icon here. If not, go to your options and make sure that you embed the image. Okay. Now the next is I just want to point out that in the exercise requirements and instructions, I have this graphic, and I have sketch and then logo 2 through 10, and I just happened that this one was called final logo, which is fine, but you'll notice there's not a logo 1, and that's because in this instance the student began logo 1 on the sketch layer. Now I'm going to look at this and get a sense, again, that you have a strategy for naming your layers and your artboards. And I leave that strategy up to you. I just wanted to point out why there is not a logo 1 layer in this visual example.